So we're now many weeks into the protests in cities around the country, supported by protests in countries around the world. And honestly, even on TDR, our coverage a lot of the time focuses on the vicious violence against the protesters, the terrible misinformation and dishonest narratives, trying to say what the right thinks the protesters are trying to accomplish. And all of that is true, and all of that needs to be fought against. But we also thought it might be useful to try to take stock of some of what has already been produced by these protests. What has not been produced is what the protests are essentially calling for, which is a fundamental rebooting of law enforcement and, rethinking the philosophy of all of it and divorcing it from its racist roots. We don't have that yet, but we do have some things. And the producers here at TDR have put together a great list of some of the changes. So I just wanted to run a few of them past you so that we can, take stock a little bit. So San Francisco announced last week that trained unarmed professionals will respond to non-criminal calls instead of police. On Saturday, Colorado lawmakers passed a bill to introduce sweeping police changes, including banning chokeholds and requiring officers to intervene if they see excessive force being used. On that, I would love to see what the consequences are if they don't intervene. Because if it's a slap on the wrist, then it's not going to change anything. But let's see, a little bit more. The Louisville Metro Council has voted unanimously to ban no-knock warrants. The legislation was titled Breonna's Law in honor of a woman who was killed during a raid on her home earlier this year. We've got more that we'll go to, but what do you think so far? I don't know if we talked much about the protests. What do you think about the effort, the strike back, and what's been accomplished?
So if anyone knows, when I talk about issues of police, I always make sure that I always speak with fairness, right? Because I don't think that all cops are bad, right? And I don't think that all cops who don't speak up are bad either. I think some of them are scared because if we're talking about gang behavior and gang activity, we have to believe that women are intimidated, people of color are intimidated, other white allies who don't think stuff. Look what happened to that one black woman who spoke up about someone getting choked. They fired her. Yeah. They're trying to pass a law. So big ups to San Francisco, because in addition to addressing the concern of its citizens, it is also taking care of law enforcement in a way that is, I think, it's productive to the holistic approach of what we're doing with law enforcement, because a lot of times police officers are overworked, they're underpaid, they are tired of the Karens, they're on the beat over, working 12, 16 hours, and here this white woman is calling a cop because black people are having a barbecue in the park. Yeah. So all of that stuff has to weigh on the psyche. So if you take away you create the people to do that so that law enforcement can really focus on law enforcement while you rehabilitate, restore, rebuild, and do what you need to do with law enforcement. You are also delegating responsibilities to, it's funny when you see the joke about, or the cartoon of the fireman going to rescue the cat, but the fireman going to rescue the cat is costing the taxpayers dollars and is also exhausting that fireman that needs to be ready to go fight a fire. So when I think the protests are just the beginning. Like I said about DACA, these are all battles. We are in a war. It's been in play for so many years. But the no-knock warrants, it's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. Breonna's Law is lovely, but what's going to happen in that case about who's going to be brought to justice because of negligence? Someone has lost their life and someone whose reputation has been tarnished. And those are just 3 police departments that we're talking about, maybe 4. And we have how many police departments in this country? And so now, we're dealing with the pushback of people who think that we just want to abolish police and let ourselves, because they don't understand what defund the police means. So I think that, I'm going to always celebrate the wins, but I'm just not going to get complacent in the moment because I know that there's a long road ahead of what we're dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to read a few more, but definitely don't get complacent because at a federal level, Trump doesn't want to do literally anything. We're going to have some of him talking about the protests in a little bit. He doesn't want to do anything, as Ida points out. For every department that we mention here, there's 200 that haven't done anything. In Atlanta, supposedly, a bunch of cops have walked off the job saying, if you don't want us, we're not gonna we're not going to do our job. So we'll see. So it's certainly not all wins. But let me give you a little bit more of some of what's been done. The Say Their Name agenda for police reform put forward by Governor Andrew Cuomo would make police disciplinary records transparent, ban chokeholds, make false race-based 911 reports a hate crime. Further, the New York Attorney General, instead of the local DA, will act as an independent prosecutor for police officers accused of murder. And if I would have to guess, in the next few years, the biggest impact that will have is that police unions, rather than donating in DA races, will donate for the choice of the AG.
Right.
So, but maybe for a year or two, it'll be good until that independence is gone. Let's see. We've also got the Minneapolis City Council a little while back passed a resolution to replace the police department with a community-led public safety system. They also then made clear that that's sort of an aspirational thing. So who knows if that'll ever actually end up happening. But I guess it's something. And in DC, where the mayor, I think, well, has previously, if you go back a couple of years, had some really critical comments of Black Lives Matter, did sign legislation banning police from using neck restraints on suspects. The bill also bans the use of tear gas, pepper spray, rubber bullets, and stun grenades to disperse protesters. And the council also passed a bill that requires the mayor to release police body camera video from any police-involved death or serious use of force within 3 days of the incident, which I guess is something. Doesn't necessarily stop them from suspiciously breaking the camera or turning it off, but... or juries doing anything when they see the footage, because very often those juries don't seem convinced by the fact that body cam footage shows them shooting someone in the back. But it is a few wins.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's wins. I think one of the funniest things that we deal with when it comes to police is that the police says, hey, wait a minute, guys, hold on 1 second. We're going to investigate ourselves and let you know what we did. And then they come back and they say, oh, you know what? We didn't do anything wrong. And we have witnesses, other police. So when we talk up of reforming the police, we do need an independent, entity that is going to investigate these wrongful, acts that have cost people their eyes during the protest. Did you see how many people with these rubber bullets? Because people hear rubber bullets and they think that they are not dangerous, that they cannot be lethal, and it's unheard of. And a good other thing that they can do is hold those cops accountable that behave so egregiously during the protest and cause so much harm to the citizens of this country who employ them. Like that there were a lot of, I saw so much footage of people bleeding and being beaten and being kicked and being punched. We have to make examples of them. They are also citizens of this country. They are employed by us. They are servants of the public. And with those of you, this is the argument, John, that bothers me the most is when people say, my job is to get home to my family. No, your job is for me to get home safe to my family.
Yes.
And I need you to understand that. And if you don't want that job, there are a lot of jobs where your life is not in danger like that. But when you take that oath, the oath is for you to protect and serve your citizens. And it's very self-centered and very selfish of you to say that. And that does not mean that we want to see police officers die or get murdered. And when you think about the woman at the McDonald's who was upset about waiting 5 minutes for an Egg McMuffin, just imagine George Floyd had a knee on his neck longer than that, and she was complaining about waiting for an Egg McMuffin for 5 minutes, and 3 more minutes and 46 seconds there was a knee on George Floyd's neck that led to his death. So we don't get enough thank yous. You sound like me when I was on the honor roll. You know what my dad used to say? My dad was to say, you doing well in school is your job. You don't get praised for doing what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So we don't owe you thank you. We give it to you. That's us being kind human beings, but we don't owe you thank you. You get paid for your job.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're given an incredible amount of power, which is misused in so many cases. Yeah, you point out, the Floyd comparison, but also look at, so she had to wait for a few minutes for a McMuffin, which I'm sure you have. I've had to wait occasionally.
Every time.
I enjoy a good McMuffin, but sometimes it takes a little while. Look how Rayshard Brooks was treated at his time in a drive-in. It's worse, I would say. Absolutely. So it was just so tone deaf. Oh my God. But yeah, you're 100% right. The rubber bullets have maimed people. I've seen photos of people that look like they were hit by an IED. Basically, they were so bloodied and cut up, and And then just the insane tactics of the police that we saw that coming out of this need to be addressed. The penning protesters in, so the cops on one side say to go away, cops on the other side say to go away, but they're blocking both of the exits, and then they tear gas them. Yeah. Or like I don't know if you saw the bizarre video of there's a protester trying to walk away, and the cops are following him, and one walks up beside him, walks ahead fast in front of him, and then stops, so the protester accidentally bumps into him, and the second he bumps into him, all the cops swarm him and start attacking him. Little things like that, shooting out the windows of people when they see people filming from it and all that. Like,
oh, I saw that. Lord of the Flies, John. Lord of the Flies. Kill Piggy. And you know, when people make comparisons to Hitler's reign and what they did and the horrific, from someone who's been to Israel and has actually gone to the Holocaust Museum and seen some of the footage and the videos, when you see the way that those people behaved, is that you have to start studying the psychology of the people in law enforcement, because there is some level of mental illness when you become so consumed with power and you so consumed with, policing other people and understanding that now you have power, that you use it to abuse. And it's the same mentality, and maybe not to that degree and that extreme, but it is the beginning of that when you start seeing law enforcement behave in this terroristic manner. Yeah. And when people were like, oh, those cops that quit because of the 2 officers that knocked the older gentleman in Buffalo, I was like, we should say thank you, because if that's their attitude, we don't need them out there during the riots. Yeah. Those are the people that are against protecting and serving the citizens and their constitutional rights. So we should be glad that they quit and don't want to be a part of the riot task force, because they're toxic, and look what they do and look what they condone. And 100%. That man can't even walk.
Yeah, 100%. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.